Welcome to Transcendent. I'm the daughter. I'm Raya.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad. And this is Transcendent. So we are here to talk about a new subject this time, something that is very, very common. And it, unfortunately, is something that everyone has experienced sometime or another in their life. But in cases of, say, LGBT, it happens more often that you are the victim.
When somebody torments you with a stuffed bunny.
Yeah. Well, what we're talking about is bullying.
Yes, we are. And I bring that up because that was something that I used to do to my younger sister. And if there's one thing that I could take back in my life, there's probably other things I would take back first, but that would be it's certainly in my top 5.
Yeah.
I had the stuffed bunny, and when mom and dad would leave, I would be the one that would be the babysitter, and I would take this bunny, and I didn't know that I did know, but I didn't know how bad it was. I would torment her I don't even really know what I did. I gave the bunny a voice.
You gave the bunny a voice, and it never spoke in contractions. And you would shove that bunny in her face and on her neck and stuff, and she was not happy about it. But you're leaving part of the story out. I was the victim of the bunny sometimes, too. And you had this bunny voice that was so obnoxious.
I'm sorry. I wish that I could take this back. I will tell you, I did the bunny voice for my daughter, and she thought it was the greatest thing ever. She thought it was such a cute bunny. We found it when you moved. And so I showed her the bunny. But so this is a minor thing, but we want to talk about, and really, it was minor for me, but it was pretty major for my sister.
Yeah.
It really was a big deal, and enough where she didn't want to stay home. And so that's what we're talking about today is how do we deal with bullying? How do we deal with bullying in the family? How do we deal with bullying from an LGBTQ perspective when we especially get bullied so much more? And because we're bullied, then oftentimes we want to lash out at other people. And so we sometimes can end up being the bullies as well.
Oh, and I saw an example of that. I was, not that I'm a regular, and I'll tell you I'm not a regular on this, but I just happened to watch one time on TV, I watched Dr. Phil. And he had somebody on there who was, I think, the son of this woman, and she couldn't handle him. And he was really terrible, and he was bullying his mother. So, and he was LGBT. I don't remember the situation, but he clearly was bullying his mother. They would show videos of how that happened. And so when we think of that, we often think, well, maybe it's the dad, and it often is. And they can really say, what are you doing that for? Come on, get out of that. And the whole bit that they do. Well, but sometimes it works the other way around. So bullying occurs. Yes, it occurs in your school. It occurs in your workplace. It occurs in your social life. It occurs in all those places. But right now, we'd like to talk about how it occurs in the family. And not that we won't be discussing some of the other areas, because I think it is one of the biggest concerns, especially of people who are just starting to come out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely it is. It's this very, very scary thing to come out. And in fact, I have somebody right now that I know that is afraid to come out specifically because of a sibling. And they're really worried about what is the sibling going to say? Is the sibling going to torment them and never let it go and constantly bring it up? Or is the sibling going to be okay about it? And they're pretty sure that the sibling is not going to be okay. And that's making it really difficult. So we want to talk about what do you do when you're being bullied. We also want to talk about what to do when you realize that you're being the bully. and what to do when you see somebody being bullied. So all three perspectives.
Exactly. That is a big subject, a long subject, and it's probably a double podcast one. At least we'll find that out when we get to the end of this, if we do. So that's something we really need to look at much more closely. But bullying takes so many forms, and there's so many different ways it happens, and sometimes it's one against one, and sometimes it's a group against one. And that probably has to be the worst. And I think when it's a group against one, if they are looking for a reaction and you give it to them, it makes things worse. You think that's true?
Usually that's the case. If you remember, there was an old VeggieTales episode where they talked about bullying. And this was a situation where there was a classic playground bully. And it turned out that the dad was helping the son work through the issue. And it turns out that the dad of the playground bully had actually bullied him as well. Or there was something, I don't remember if I had the story exactly right. And so the son asked, "So Dad, what did you do?" He said, "I finally stood up to him." And the son said, "So what did he do?" And the dad said, "He pounded me." But after that, I was never afraid of him again. And so there is a time where if you stand up, but you don't fight back, you don't fight fire with fire. When you fight fire with fire, it only makes more fire. So that doesn't help things because that person only wants to attack you back more then. But if you stand up and you don't give in, but you don't fight back, you're no longer all that fun.
One of the interesting things about bullies is that often they were bullied by someone else, and they will transfer that to you then. If they're looking for somebody that they can bully, and they want a reaction. If they don't get a reaction, you're taking the fun out of it for them. You're taking the reward for them out of it, and that is one of the things you have to keep in mind. Keeping calm is certainly a big part of it. But remember, we're talking about family here, and sometimes your bully would be a brother or sister. It could be you older or younger, and especially tough is when it's a parent. And I don't mean a parent. I mean when it is your parent.
Right. Right.
It's obviously a parent if you know you're being bullied. But,
and so that's the hard thing. What we oftentimes will tell children, when they're teenagers, is oftentimes when it becomes the worst. And it can feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel.
yes.
And what we have to remind kids of is that it gets better. And there's a whole campaign online saying it gets better. But when you're a teenager in the midst of it, it feels like I'm going to be stuck here forever. You're not. It does get better. You get a chance where you can get away and you can get some space, and you're not going to have to live that way any longer.
We were speaking earlier before we actually came on the air here. We were speaking, and I was telling Raya about trying to remember a situation when I was bullied, and I think it was in 5th grade, and I was going to be part of. I was interested in joining Boy Scouts, so my mother took me over to one of the other kids' house who was in the same grade I was, and he was already in scouting, and he wanted to bring me there and introduce me to scouting. Well, we spent some time at his house, and while we were there, he was instantly bullying me. He bullied me all throughout the entire time I was at his house, and even when we went to the scouting thing. And I can remember, I didn't react, but I can remember I kept thinking through this whole thing, someday I'm going to grow up and I'm going to own my own company and I'll never hire him.
And it happened.
Yes, it did. Although he never applied for a job, but I wished he would. But
And you have to wonder, what kind of pain is he going through? What did he deal with that he felt like he had to take that out on you?
yeah, what makes a bully a bully? I don't really know. Different things.
Different things.
But in the case of your family, it's because they don't like what they heard from you. They don't like what you said. They don't like that you're coming out. They don't like that you are going to embarrass them. That seems to be something that is a big concern.
Yeah, there's definitely that. There's times where it's a motivated bullying. Sometimes it's just motivated by just an internal need to feel bigger or better. And one of the ways that you do that is by tearing the other person down. So you tear them down, and the more that you tear them down, it gives you sort of a perverse sense of superiority. It's
Right.
never a good feeling of superiority, because you never walk away feeling like, wow, look at, look at the good that I brought to the world. You always feel lousy about it, but somehow you feel a little better about yourself, enough to justify keeping doing it. I think it might be little hits of dopamine.
Funny you said, this is a completely different subject, but I got to say, when you're talking about you don't feel good about it, I can remember when I first moved here and I joined the Lions Club. And after I joined the Lions Club, after the meeting, a bunch of guys would get together and they'd play cards. They'd play poker. And a couple of the guys in that group really didn't have any money at all. And they were playing for higher stakes. And I did that one, not very high stakes, but higher, for somebody who was just really living from paycheck to paycheck, as I was at that time. I was young. It was more difficult. And I can remember playing with one of the guys in that group who was a friend of mine. And he was like me, living from paycheck to paycheck. And I think I won like $80 or something from him, which was a lot of money at that time. And I walked away feeling really bad. And if I would have lost $80, I would have walked away feeling bad. So either way, if I'm playing something like that, I may win or I may lose, but either way, I'm feeling bad. And I think, isn't it a little bit like that with the bullying? Maybe they walk away and yet they're feeling bad.
Right. Absolutely. So both people are dealing with bad feelings.
Yes.
So what do you do when you're dealing with bad feelings? Whether you're the bullier and you're trying to get yourself to stop, or you're the
bully.
And you're just trying to make it through this. How do you stay filled up yourself? Because both of those roles end up being very draining, aren't they?
They are, very much so. And not only are they draining, but they are also toxic to the relationship.
Absolutely toxic.
And that's tough.
It is tough.
So there's no reward in this for either side. And sometimes one cannot stop themselves from doing it, whichever side you're on. Yeah, if you're the bully or you're the person that's being bullied and you're reacting to it, you can't stop yourself from doing it. And either way, you end up feeling bad, and it's a terrible situation. But so we ask, well, wait a minute, what can I do? Well, there's a lot of things you can do, and there's no right or wrong way. But
there are definitely some wrong ways.
Oh, that's true.
But you're right. There's no right answer in this.
There's no one right answer.
There's no one right answer. I think that one of the best ways to deal with it is to take some time on your own and to visualize what the situation, if the situation could go as well as you can imagine, what would it look like? and spend some time imagining through and maybe praying through that and praying for the what you want to see as the solution. Well, what I would really like to see is this. Or if you're not somebody that has a faith, maybe journaling, but journaling the solution. What I would like to see is when the bully comes up to me and gives me a hard time, that instead of reacting, I want to act in love towards that person and say, boy, you must really be struggling with some hard things. Do you want to talk about it? That one maybe is a little bit silly, but each situation, you know the relationship. So you stop and you think through, what would a solution look like?
Well, you mentioned that, and that is exactly right. That's one of the things that often people will suggest. They try to be a friend, which is difficult when that you're there and you're being bullied. You want to listen, you want to support, and you want to speak up, and that's really important. Say something. Don't say nothing. If this is what you want to do, if you want to be a friend and bring things out, and just be honest with them. Hey, I'd really like to hear what you really think about this. Where are we at on this? And and every situation could be different. And rather than giving you things to say, that's not something you're going to take away and remember that forever. It doesn't quite work that way. You'll whatever your situation is, you will end up saying something anyway. So if you try to make that something that isn't confrontational, it's something more like trying to be a friend. And here, another thing is staying calm is a big thing. Rather than getting upset, rather than raising your voice, those kinds of things, that is a winning signal to the bullier. And when they have when you set out a winning signal to them, they'll just do it more and more.
And it's hard. It's hard. When you're in that situation, it can be really hard to keep calm. But if you remember that you win as you keep calm, you keep your eye on the proverbial ball, and the ball in this case is whether or not you are reacting.
Right, exactly. And you hear these things that can be terrible, things that could really be hurtful to you. Well, those are things that are really difficult for you not to react to, but they are the things that could beat you down, and don't let them beat you down.
Right.
If you're reacting, if you show a reaction to those hurtful things, that's another signal. Oh boy, we got something here that's going to work. And they'll just do it more and more and share it.
Of course. One thing that I have done all of my life, and this has kept me out of a lot of conflict, and it's almost a social jujitsu move, that you have some negative energy coming at you, and you take that negative energy and where you can redirect it back in a way that's positive. And the way that I have always done that is every single person that I come into contact with, I try to find ways that I can show them respect, that I can show them how much I value them as a person. And I've done this all the way back in high school. I never got into a fight, ever. Everybody that I knew got into at least some kind of a fight or a scuffle somewhere, but I somehow made it through my entire life. I've never been in a fight. And I did it because I always show people respect. And I can't claim that this is something great that I do. It's just, this is just natural. This is naturally how I'm wired. If you're not wired this way, I think it's a lot harder to do. But I can tell you, the more that you show people respect, then the less that they want to come and beat up on you, because you're actually one of the people that is feeding them. They're beating up on you to begin with because they want to be fed. And if you take that as a sign that they're looking for affirmation and validation, if instead of coming back with anger and hatred and wanting to come back and fight back or wanting to react or whatever, but if instead you take it as a sign, you have to stop and tell yourself, oh, that's right. This person they must be going through some things in their life as well. And then you come back and you say, hey, you know what? I just want to let you know, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is how every time we ever play a game, how much you just really throw yourself into the game. Or one of the things that I appreciate about you, and it has to be legitimate. So you have to look and find something that you legitimately appreciate about this person's character. You don't use it as an opportunity to make a joke to them or something, but you let that come out and they say, wow, thank you. And that's one of the ways that you can earn their respect, by showing them respect first.
Okay, to be clear about this, what I understand you saying, you're not doing this in the moment of being bullied. You're doing this at other times when you have an opportunity to interact with them. And is that what I'm saying? Or are you doing it in the moment of being bullied? Because that sounds challenging to me.
I can't imagine that it would work so well in the very moment, but I think that it could work in the conversation. Most bullying that happens, certainly among adults, or if it's happening in a family kind of conversation where it's not one person just doing it to get a rise out of the other person, but they're doing it because they're angry about something that the person has done or whatever. It's usually little digs that they'll get in.
Right.
And the dig, it lasts for a moment, and you kind of react against it. We'll give that a moment and let the conversation go on to something else. And when you get a moment, once the conversation is out from that little dig that you got in, use that as a reminder to just give positively to that person.
I think in a situation where you are in a situation where it's a father and son or father and daughter, and it always comes up, you know that it's always going to come up because the person who isn't accepting of your situation, they can't help but bring it up. They want to sit down and say, well, I'm going to start over in their head. They want to sit down and say, you're my daughter. I want to mend this thing. If you would only figure this out, if you'd only quit doing this kind of thing. But they won't say that in those words. They'll sit down and they'll try to make it an acceptable relationship for a little while, and then they'll say, well, when are you going to stop doing this, by the way? They bring it up somewhere along the way before your meeting is over. It's a challenge. It's a really tough challenge.
It is a challenge, but here's where we come back to the analogy of the emotional bank account. When you have a bullying relationship, you have a bank account that's on empty. And somebody in the relationship is saying, I'm going to continue making withdrawals from it, even if it gives you a bounce fee. And what you need to do if you want to keep that relationship is start making deposits into that relationship. And even if you're the only one that's doing it, eventually there's going to be some positive things in it there. So imagine that you're the child and it's a parent that is doing the bullying, which can be very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult. And that should not be ever the case. But if you're in that situation, you can't get out of it. Well, what can you do? Well, you can imagine how that parent probably feels, knowing a lot of relationships that I've seen that are in this cycle. If we were to sit down with your parent and ask them to tell us all about your relationship with them, they would probably paint a very different picture and probably point out a lot of things that you as the child have done that have made the relationship very difficult for them as well. Now, ultimately, it's always the parent's responsibility because the parent is the one that has the power in the relationship.
They set the tone.
I set the tone with my children, you set the tone with me, and that's always going to be the case. But if you're the child and you're in a situation like that, it doesn't mean that you're powerless. You could be the first one to say, boy, what must this be like to be the parent? And maybe think through, you know what, I maybe have done some things. I maybe have been difficult at times. And start with an attitude of gratitude towards the other person and think through, what do I really appreciate about this person? If this person was gone from my life, what would be missing? Well, I don't know. I'm so frustrated with the person and, I just don't want to be around. They just make me so mad and so angry. Well, there was that one time when I was in need and they came over and they dropped everything for me and they came over and they helped me out. Oh, yeah, there was that. Now you remember that and you've got one point of gratitude that you can start with.
The way I look at that sometimes is the same as you're thinking, boy, we don't get along at all. We have nothing in common. We disagree about everything. Well, stop for a minute, because that's what I would always think too. Oh, I can't get along with the person. Everything they say, I disagree with. They're on the wrong political side. They don't agree with any of my ideas or my thoughts or any of that. Stop and think. What do I agree with? What do we agree? Where is one point of agreement? And start there.
Right. Agreement brings healing.
Yes.
Disagreement brings conflict, and agreement brings healing.
Hey, we really need to send that to everybody in Congress.
Yes, we do. And actually, that you can think about this in terms of time frames as well. When you're having a conversation, if the conversation is about the past, generally you're going to be talking about, where should we place blame?
Yes.
So if you've ever got a situation like that, again, try a jujitsu move, reframe the conversation to be about the future. Look, I don't want to talk about what's happened in the past. Sometimes you need to. But look, right now, let's not talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. And what can we do in the future? And the future is about possibility, and the future is about solutions.
That's very good. That's great advice. So those are some things we can talk about. We're talking about bullying, or we're talking about disagreements in families, and we want to keep it kind of focused on that. I know there are other situations, and you can use some of these things in other situations, but remember, in family, it's either working through those kinds of things or becoming estranged, and that's really difficult. So you want to do everything you can to try to find some common ground to begin. And I know that in every family, there's at least one person that can be difficult. Could be a brother or a sister, could be an aunt or an uncle. You got an uncle like that?
We have talked about that, Uncle, yes.
Yeah.
I think there can be a time where the healthiest thing to do is to say, our relationship is so toxic right now that I need to take a break. And if that's where you're at, I understand that. But we don't want to live there. We don't want to stay there. Hopefully that is just a resting place on the way. So if you need to go and, get proverbial reinforcements for your emotional health, if you need to go and get built back up so that you can come back in, that's fine. But we don't want to end there. We want our relationships to be restored, because nobody benefits when the relationship stays permanently broken.
That's exactly right. Another nice thing to remember is that if your family is more than just you and one other person, if there's a bigger part of the family, remember there's safety in numbers. And if you've got brothers and sisters, if you've got aunts and uncles, if you've got other people surrounding you, and you've got more people supporting you, embrace that. And that helps. Not that you want them in there all picking on the bully. That's not going to work either. But kind of try to bring it around to that type of thinking. Where do we agree? Where can we go on? How can we move forward from here and begin in that kind of a situation?
Right. Get some emotional support. Get some people around you that are not tearing you down, but that are building you up. And a lot of people, I think, feel like they can never be around people that build them up. And you know why that is? Is because they're always tearing other people down themselves. And so they foster a relationship that produces toxic relationships. And if that's you need to start working on that and saying, what can I do not to tear other people down, but to build them up? Because the more that you build people up, the more they will build you up. And you only win.
We're here to pump
You up.
That was an old skit from Saturday Night Live.
That's right. Well, we would love to hear what you have to say about bullying, about situations where you've been bullied and what you've done about it. If you have good situations that you would like to let us know about, or bad situations that you're still trying to work through, we would love to hear from you. And you can email us. Do you have the email address?
Transcendent, that's TRANDESCENDANT @gmail.com. Transcendent@gmail.com.
So email us and let us know what you're thinking. And if you would, tell a friend about our podcast. Another thing you can do, leave a review on iTunes. It really helps us out.
Yes, we'd be looking forward to hearing from you. And thanks a lot, and we'll see you again next week.